Hello, this is London calling. I would like to inform you that you are about to listen to a podcast. The views of the host and the guests reflect only their own and not that of the community as a whole. I hope you enjoy the podcast. And now, Eddie, with his band, will play the banter section.
Oh, before we start, if you hear any smashing, it's just my turtle going mental in the background.
Okay, that's the cold open we needed. Perfect. You have a turtle?
Yeah, you know how a turtle. It's it's kind of like end of summer mating season, so he's getting a bit amorous. That's all I'm going to say on the matter.
Amazing. Well, my cold open was just going to be Charlotte doesn't know how to do a podcast, but that was much better.
I am here to please.
Oh, this is so good. For people that are confused, and we'll do this proper intro in a minute, I'm not Eddie, and that's also not Eddie. Eddie's not here, he's on holiday. So we got given permission to do an episode. So what this will be is approximately an hour of me worrying that I haven't clicked record, some very ADHD notes written on 3 different pieces of paper, and Tom, who's a professional.
Within reason.
Within reason. That's entirely fair. How are you doing, Tom? Have you been up to much this week?
Working, but also I've noticed you have pressed the record button, so this should be good to go.
It is good because the red light is flashing on and off. I would like it to stay there because every time it goes off, I'm like, hang on a second.
Yeah, we're all good. We're recording.
I've never been allowed on this side of the software before. This has always been Eddie's domain.
Every day's a school day, right?
Well, exactly. And so if it's bad, it's not my platform. I'm sorry, Eddie, I love you. So let me do the proper intro so people can work out who you are.
Okay.
I've written in my notes, banter section, followed by pause for music. So I'm just going to pause. Hello, everybody. This is the Ed Talks About somewhat weekly podcast, talking about cosplay, Comic-Con, photography, and everything else. I'm not your host, Eddie, as I'm Charlotte, and Eddie is off on a well-earned break, leaving me in charge of this particular episode. I am joined by a very special guest, and I believe first-timer to the podcast, Tom, who's a talented photographer and a friend of mine, and we'll be talking about shooting styles at Comic-Con versus not at Comic-Con, what makes a good con photo, and lots more besides. So welcome to the podcast, Tom. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, my name's Tom. Pleasure to be here. I used to go by TR Photography. I've just recently changed my name to Clicks83 for those that didn't know already.
Amazing. How was rebranding? Was that easy or?
I mean, it was easy to change the name, but not on every single social media platform that you're on, with security checks and whatnot. But yeah, doing new business cards, doing new logos, etc. It was actually quite fun, and I kind of needed it.
That's nice. I did think you'd been hacked because you added me. You didn't tell me you were doing it. Added me as a collaborator on a post, but I knew you'd taken the photo, but it wasn't your username. So I was like, oh my god, someone's stolen Tom's account, and then I realised that I'm stupid and it wasn't.
No, I literally put it in my story the day before on Instagram, and then the next day I just went for it full throttle.
Fair enough.
And then garnered a few more followers because of it for some reason. So.
Oh, nice. Well,
yeah.
You know, it's nice to now be like, instead of Photography Tom, and people just think I'm calling you Photography Tom, now can be like Clicks83 Tom.
That's the one.
Is 83 the year you were born?
Unfortunately, not 0083, but 1983. I'm
You're
not that old.
So you've rebranded to become the Taylor Swift of photographers.
Let's go for that, yes.
Sam will be delighted. Right.
It's not 89, unfortunately.
It's not 89, but it makes you wiser, so let us begin. We wanted to chat. This will be slightly less formal than Eddie's one because I'm slightly worse than Eddie at doing this. But we were chatting about what we wanted to talk about, and we thought, as both of us shoot in and outside of Comic Cons, it would be quite nice to kind of compare the two. Also, Tom, unusually for this podcast, we're both cosplayers and photographers. So,
former cosplayer
who occasionally brings it out.
Very former cosplayer, yeah.
But you have done both at cons before.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, which is nice. Because normally I confuse people by being like, I'd like to answer this question from both sides.
No, obviously that's where I've done photography for years, but obviously got into professional via cons from being a cosplayer. So
amazing.
Prefer to be behind the lens.
It's nice to have you here finally. So Question one. I don't know how you meant to start these. Let's make it really casual. Question one in this exam.
It sounds very formal.
It's very formal. How do you approach shooting at a con versus outside of a con? Like, is there a difference in the way you think about it, the way you go about it? Like, what's your, like, week, month, days before look like?
I've obviously in cons. I shoot with so many people, so I just normally I put a story up on Insta a few days before, a few weeks before, asking who I'm seeing. Get loads of messages, etc., and then try and meet up with as many people as possible in a specific spot normally, but that's never the case, as you probably well know.
Yeah.
Outside of cons is very different because I shoot a whole range of stuff that I don't normally post on Instagram or socials. Fashion to boudoir to maternity, newborn shoots, and then everything in between. Most of it's all client confidential, so very, very different in that aspect. Whereas cons, it's just I'm not going to say a barrage of people coming at you. Whereas outside of cons, it depends. If it's like a cosplay shoot outside of cons, then obviously that's completely different in itself.
Yeah.
But cons are great for networking.
So when people message you telling you they're going to be there or they want to see you, do you go and research into their characters? Because I know some photographers love to have like, and I think Eddie's one of these who likes to have like little mood boards for every character they're going to see. But is that
I
your way of doing it?
I mean, I'm a massive geek, as you probably know, so I know a lot of characters. It's really the unfamiliar ones that I'm not like across with. A lot of anime stuff, because the anime I used to watch when I was younger was very different to what you get now. So I'm not, and there's so much more of it. But obviously things like Star Wars, Marvel, DC, I'm really, really clued up on.
Yeah.
But the things I find difficult is when you have a cosplayer, and they've got a costume outfit cosplay, but they've kind of done it because it's popular at the time. So when you ask them about their character, if you're not too sure of it yourself,
Yeah.
you ask them like, what do they do? What's their main pose? What are they known for? And they just kind of stand there. They don't know. That can be quite awkward. So then you have to do a little bit of research afterwards and hope that the shots that you've taken can be made into something that's or that they'd like, basically.
I totally agree with you actually, because I'm not someone that tends to plan beforehand. I kind of go with like how the costume moves or like how it would look photographed well.
Yeah.
And I really struggle when I talk to people and I'm like, so tell me about your character, and they can't articulate it. I'm like,
No.
or they are struggling to pose like the character, and it does get to a point where you're like, there's only so much I can do with basic posing. You're not going to get the specifics you wanted if you don't know.
No, it's quite difficult when you've got a camera, a cosplay that's like static. Say they're like, like the big Warhammer cosplays or things like, yes, they look incredible, but obviously they can't physically pose.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to get any sort of emotion through the shots, and especially I find difficult with cosplayers that wear masks.
Yeah.
You can't see any emotion there, so they have to pose. And when they don't know what the character does per se to pose or what they're known for, it can be really, really difficult.
I think my advice is always to stand, even if your costume's not fully finished, stand in most of your costume in front of a mirror and just work out what looks good, even if it
Yeah.
feels stupid. Because, like you said, sometimes people go into a pose, but it doesn't work for what they're wearing. Like you need your arms further out or something to look dynamic. There
No,
is
obviously,
no
like,
shame in doing that all in a mirror beforehand.
if you're like a Spider-Man, obviously you want to be crawling on the floor or the walls or something like that. But
Yeah.
if it's within reason, but if it's something like I said, I'm not that clued up on anime. Past 4 years, I've had to because I've done quite a few shoots, but a lot of the characters are quite similar in the way they pose and things. So it's a lot easier for me now than it was when I say first properly started about 3 years ago.
This is potentially a contentious question, but I've spoken on this podcast before about not massively liking shooting anime, not necessarily because of the people, but because it's not something I've got any interest in. So, do you having said that you used to watch it, do you enjoy shooting anime the same as any other cosplay, or is
Um,
it just like different for you as
yeah,
well?
absolutely. I mean, a lot of the new anime, a lot of the outfits are very, very similar.
Yeah.
Um, but I used to watch a lot of manga. Um, all the good subtitle stuff, not dubbed. We don't do dubbed.
No,
When I was
agreed.
younger, before it got cool, and and some of the outfits I've seen most recently, actually, a lot of it's having a bit of a resurgence. But some of the outfits I've done, like there's a game that came out. I did a big shoot with a few well-known cosplayers. Some of the outfits are absolutely incredible. There's so much detail in them because they've got so much more popular now as well. Um, they can look, well, yeah, amazing. A lot better than say like a Spider-Man suit.
Yeah, that's fair. And
So
I think part
it's
of
just
when
more
I
detail. I like detail.
oh yeah, detail like I like anime, but I kind of fell out of love with it because I was getting a lot of kind of like schoolgirl outfits or like flippy skirt outfits, and there's
Yeah,
when you're at a con, there's not a huge amount you can do to
no,
get a really good shot of someone. So when they're showing you like the picture that, oh, I loved it when you did this, and it's like a Spider-Man swinging one, you're like, but you can't get that in that because I don't know what you're doing.
yeah,
So I've moved away from it, but I think that's really, it's just not in my interest wheel park.
no. I'll shoot with, I mean, I'll shoot with absolutely anyone or anything, and if I can feel I can make it work, I'll do my utmost best too. But I have to alter my style massively, especially with anime. Um, Because a lot of the times when I'm doing cosplay, I will try and shoot people the way I'd want to be shot when I was doing cosplay. I try and make everyone look like, say, a movie poster.
Yeah.
It's only when you're on location or you've got a good background where you don't have to do that. You don't have to do a composite or anything like that, um, which is quite difficult to do with some anime, especially if you don't know what it's about.
Yeah. Well,
Because
this
like,
thing,
if you've never watched it, say if you've never watched a Marvel film, you wouldn't have a clue, basically,
yeah.
and vice versa.
Well, that leads very nicely on to my next question, which was we shoot. I was trying to explain to you. I said polar opposite, which is wrong. We shoot quite differently at con. I think mainly just based on like how much gear we've got with us. Most of the time when I've seen you at con, you've got at least one strobe light out, which helps you get those like poster type photos. Whereas I'm kind of running around in a cosplay, sweating my ass off with one camera.
Crawling
Um,
around on the floor. Yeah.
so do you? What gear do you tend to like? What's your ideal set of gear to bring to a con? And do you bring it because you want to shoot the poster style, or just because that's how you're comfortable, like controlling the light?
I yeah, literally mainly for the poster style. In cons the lighting's terrible,
Yes.
no matter where you are. This is one of the reasons why I've never done a London con, because you're either outside near the trees or stuck up against a grey wall. And then if you're out with the sunshine or a gloomy sky, the lighting's going to constantly change. So I do very much like to be in control of that. That being said, it depends what the cosplay is. Like a lot of the ones, do you remember the ones I shot of Tainted Pixie where she was Sarah from the Labyrinth?
Yes. Oh,
A
those
lot
are
of
cool.
them were natural light. I didn't
Hmm.
use any strobes, but it went with the cosplay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like again, I always try and give people 3 photos back that, either composite or otherwise, that try and resemble some sort of poster or TV promo image or something like something cool that they can look back on and say, yeah, that was me. I look great. Um, but gear wise, yeah, my ideal setup is I use 3 flashes, one for background light, one for fill light, and either 2 side lights if I'm using gels. Um, just literally so I can control everything that's in the area, especially if there's other togs in the background using flashes, and if people are walking by as well, which happens a lot at Birmingham.
Yeah.
If you're stuck up on the airwalk, I can control that light. I can block them out the background. You'd never even know they were there. I like to do as much in camera, so I don't have to edit, and that
That's so
really really
fair.
helps. I like my lens flare a lot. I like using particles a lot, and if I can do that in shot, so I don't have to do it later on,
Yeah.
it's even better for me. And because of the volume of people I tend to shoot with, I think the most I've done is like 86 in one day.
Woo.
Um, yeah, lots of editing.
It's not the best thing, but I kind of love it because I've shot with you a few times.
I work fast, don't I?
You do work fast, and I've shot with you a
Just
few times, and every time I get a photo back, I'm kind of surprised as a photographer that you got whatever light you got given where we were. Because I was like, if I had taken that shot, that lighting would have been wildly different. And it's one of the joys of shooting with you is I know that it's going to have your style, and I don't quite know what that's going to be, and I love it.
that's because a lot of people have said this to me, like when they say your style. I cosplay, yeah, maybe. I have a particular style, like I said in the movie poster, but I don't want to be pigeonholed with that style, so I do try and mix it up a bit. Like the ones I've been recently posting are very different, but like a lot of them have light rays coming in, a lot of lens flares, etc. Like the ones we did at Fantasy Forest, even.
Yeah,
Um,
those are
but
good.
then the next lot are, they're completely different in comparison. So it literally depends on what I'm shooting.
I think the one thing, and I've noticed this a lot in photographers at the moment, is and it tends to be a direct split down the middle, and I think it's to do with, this is my working theory, it depends how you are used to shooting, because
Mm.
I would put you in the category of someone who like lifts the blacks to get that like slightly more cinematic look, whereas
Um,
I'd love to learn to edit more like that. I really struggle with it because of how I shoot. It
Again,
makes my
it
work look
depends.
weird.
Yeah, if you're using natural light, it's really hard, especially to get contrast in black.
Oh, so you think it's more of like a, because you've used lights you then can do it?
Uh, and shooting raw, yeah.
Yeah, and raw, obviously. If you don't shoot raw, obviously you don't have to shoot raw. If you want to do bigger edits like Tom and I do, then you really should be shooting raw.
You should be shooting it raw anyway. Anything else is cheating. Um,
That's true.
but yeah, it's when you, especially when I'm doing natural light stuff, it is hard because obviously on your white balance, I stick my white balance. I never put it in auto white balance. I have mine set at 5500K,
Okay.
which is very neutral. But
Yeah.
then that means you can absolutely do whatever the hell you want with it in Photoshop or Raw or Lightroom or whatever software you're using.
Slightly controversially, I change my Kelvin live on shoot.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
yeah,
not auto, but I know some people are like, that's really dumb. And sometimes I overdo it and they're all too orange, but you can fix it. But
yeah,
I find it much easier to like imagine the scene if I'm also slightly doing the colours myself at the time.
yes, yeah. It helps, like especially if you're in live view mode as well. Like, are you a viewfinder or a back of the screener?
I was a viewfinder because I had my Nikon D810, which is has a mirror as
Mm,
DSLR. And now I found with the mirrorless one, because it's a bigger screen,
yeah,
I'm using the viewfinder, and I actually, it in a very, I feel, old way, it's saving my back a lot, because I used to have to lie on the floor all the time and everyone would joke about it. I was like, no, it really is the only way to actually be able
yeah,
to see through the camera. But now
yeah.
I can hold the camera on the floor and
And
flick
then
the
pop the
screen up
screen
and
up.
have a look,
Yeah.
which is
I mean,
nice.
you've heard my knees.
You've heard my knees, yeah, we've got a knee chorus. But
Yeah.
I do love
You,
that you shoot poster style and like that with lights, because I was talking to Sam. Sam, for anyone that doesn't know, is my best friend and Tom's girlfriend. She's great. We'll shout out Sam. Um, she's the other ginger one in all my pictures, if that helps. I was talking to Sam about you, and I said Tom shoots how I would like to shoot if I shot, like if I was more like structured in how I actually organized. Whereas I tend to get to a location, I'm like, right, I like not having gear, so I can be like, let's use this wall, let's use this light, and I kind of need the challenge of adapting wherever I am, be it at a con or whatever, to like
that's
make the shot.
that actually causes problems for me because I use what I try and take minimal gear,
Hmm.
which I mean I don't know whether you picked up my bag at Fantasy Forest. It was not light, even with like I only had two flashes. Don't get me wrong, I brought two cameras, but yeah, even that was like 20 kilograms.
Yeah,
Which carrying around a con all day can be quite
yeah.
painful, to say the least. But even what I've started to do now is go back to using one light because I'm trying to go back to basics a little bit
Hmm.
with one flash, and I can move it around easily. Don't get me wrong, I've battered about 15 soft boxes in the past 3 weeks alone.
Yeah.
Dropped one in a waterfall and broke a Bowen's mount, but
Oh god.
Yeah, they're not cheap anymore, unfortunately.
No, and also they're quite hard to break. So the fact you managed to break one's impressive.
Oh, a screw fell out, and then the rest of it went with it. But yeah, I'm trying to keep. I'm going very much back to basics because a relatively new camera I got. Now it's working properly. Um, Master what you've got before you do anything else. It's like when you first start photography, you literally buy everything that you don't need ever.
Yeah, yeah,
You have all the gear and absolutely no idea whatsoever.
yeah. I think the best piece of advice I can give someone is there is a really distinct point when you're using a camera and you realize, or a lens, and you realize that what you want to do is because you're better than your gear, and like it's
Yeah,
it's suddenly so obvious, and that sounds insane to say, but I was using my 50mm at con and I was trying to do an effect, and I suddenly realized like I now need a 1.4 85 to do what I want to do, and it's not because I just want the gear, it's because
everyone
as
wants
a
an
photographer
85.
I just can't do it without it.
Yeah,
So, and once you like wait until you get to that point every time, when you pick up the next piece of gear, you can use it really easily because you're already ready for it.
or you could take 3 paces back and it'd be exactly the same.
Silence, wench. Silence. I don't
No,
like.
I've had it. I put a post out on Instagram a few months back saying like cosplay photogs they literally stick to an 85mm lens when there's so much variation out there. I've got a 2470. I'd take a step back and you get the same effect as an 85. But
I shot.
if it's a 1.4 or 1.8, you'll pretty
Yeah.
much get the same thing.
I shot last con as an experiment on to try and get people out of the background, which is something we should talk about. Or you have spoken about with your lights. But I shot on a 70 to 200 and basically went really far away and zoomed in loads, so it
I love
just
doing that.
blurred everything out of the background. And
Yeah.
was it heavy? My God, yes. Was it worth it? Yes, because I actually managed to get some degree of separation from people on the trees to a point where they are usable photos. So
I've
that's
got
always
two
nice.
70 to 200s. I've got a 1.8, which I predominantly use for weddings, which weighs probably more than yourself, and
Yeah,
then a
I've got.
really old battered um, 4 F4,
Yeah.
which cost me like 200 quid. I could throw it around. I don't care about it. But the bokeh it produces is absolutely sublime when you take a step back. I cannot fault it. It is my go-to lens when I don't know what else to do. Like if I'm not using a 50 or 2470 or an 85, I can literally just take. It even works better when I'm using my strobes as well. That's
Okay.
literally one of the first lenses I bought, and I did I think it was MegaCon in Birmingham, and I was upstairs all day. I just had that lens on all day. It did not move.
I mean, once you find a lens that works, stick with it.
Yeah, it worked for like I said, it worked for the background. It darkened everyone out,
Yeah.
got rid of people walking past, etc., and members of the public. So I love it. I love it for weddings. I get lovely. I can stand at the back of the room, zoom in on when they're putting the rings on.
Yeah. That's
No
why I
problem.
actually bought mine for the same reason. I was shooting a couple weddings. I was like, right, you need a bigger zoom than you think. Put it that way.
Mm. Yeah, well, you can do a whole wedding on a 2470 or a 50mm.
You
It
can.
depends. Yeah, well, I mean, I've done it before. I've had
I
to.
guess because one of the ones I did was a church wedding, so I was very conscious about like trying to stay out of the way as
Yes.
much as possible because very occasionally you'll get priests that don't want you to like be up close and personal.
Yeah, the
Which
church is the only places I've had issues with when shooting, actually.
it's an interesting one because we got really deep on the podcast suddenly. I'm Church of England, and most of them are fine, but sometimes Catholic they don't like people even crossing the aisle when they're doing
No.
stuff, and that is when you have to get creative with photography because, although it's annoying, like I guess you have to kind of stick to the rules. So a zoom lens is good.
Last wedding I did was a Baptist wedding, and they literally just gave me free reign of the place. I could literally stand next to the bride and groom if I wanted to.
And did you?
No, I didn't have to. I had my 70 to 200.
Fair enough. So my last, I guess, kind of con-based question on that sub question for the first question was location-wise. You because of your gear, do you tend to then just stick to one location where you can have a safe background? This is obviously excluding
If I
cons like Fantasy
know,
Forest.
yeah, if I know I'm doing a lot of people that are going to require composites where I have to edit the background anyway, then yeah, predominantly I will stick to one spot. If it's somewhere like Fantasy Forest, it's just an amazing location, so you have to use the location. Then obviously I'll move around, but again, it depends on the cosplay. if I know what I'm doing, like sometimes it sounds weird. I'll have like a moody day, so I want to take really, really dark and moody shots, which is kind of what I do anyway.
Yeah.
Um, Lots of darks, colours, a few light rays, that kind of thing. I will tend to just stay in the same spot, but a lot of the times you've seen it. I get a queue behind and I can't
You do.
escape, and then I get obligated. I can't say no to people, um, which is
It's a
something
bit
I'm
of an
trying
ego
to.
boost too, though. When you're a photographer with a
It's
queue, it's
it's
nice.
nice. It's nice until you get kicked out by certain stewards for doing
Yeah.
it without asking permission. It happened. Yeah, it is a lovely feeling knowing that people want to work with you all the time, especially people that I've shot with quite regularly as well. But it also can be quite a hindrance because then my creativity just goes,
Yeah.
and I get stuck against. Well, it's like being at London. You get stuck on a grey wall, which is why again I use strobes, because then I can light the wall up whatever colour I want.
True. And do you plan your composites while you're shooting? Because you mentioned like having a planar background for that. When you're shooting someone, do you think I know what I'm going to do here, or do you
Yes,
look at the
depending on the
photos
cosplay.
afterwards?
Yeah. Well, what I try and mainly do, especially with cosplayers, is give at least three pictures back to everyone.
Yeah.
Um, I'll do a full body shot, above waist shot, and then a close up headshot. I have a thing with eyes. I love, especially if the makeup's amazing. I'll go right in with a 50mm right in the face and get a nice close up of the makeup basically in their eyes,
Yeah.
because that's the first thing. Even if you're wearing a huge costume and everything, people will just look at the face and their eyes straight away. And no matter what picture you give to anyone, it's like a direct thing. It's like reading from left to right. You just zoom in on their eyes. If you can't get people's eyes right, then yeah.
Absolutely no comment, because I have so much beef with. They don't know this. I've got so much beef with someone about the way they edit their eyes, and it's, if you know me, you know who it is. But
Do they whiten eyes out too much?
they do
And
whiten their eyes out too much, and I get that
yeah.
it's a stylistic thing, but it does take away from it a little bit.
Oh
So you've got
yeah,
to
but
be careful.
I
You'll
call
need to
it
be
dead
so
eye.
careful with it.
I literally call it dead eye. You see it in some magazines, and a lot of the time, a purple port where people have just
Yeah,
discovered Portrait Pro or something like that, and then just gone full in on eyes, and then just ruin every
yeah.
single emotion that was in there, and they end up looking like a waxwork dummy or something out of Doctor Who.
I think this is the key thing, like to with editing as a photographer. I am really happy for everyone that's found good AI tools or whatever to edit
Yeah,
stuff. But when it's skin retouching or eyes, you can tell immediately if you've used an AI, unless
100%.
you've used it very cleverly, which requires just as much skill as just retouching. So, you know, be careful with it, people out there.
Yeah,
Um,
go
my
easy on that. What's it called? Clarity button.
Yes. Don't just mark the clarity straight up. Just 20% is perfect. Before we move on, my favourite con shot you've done that I think everyone should see, it's a con set, is Tainted Pixie doing Black Canary.
Oh,
Because
really?
I've tried to do the screenshot before and I've never properly managed to do like the airwaves. And every
Okay.
time I see that picture of her, it makes me so happy because you've nailed it. And it's got the yellow gel in the background as well.
Yeah, I had two that day actually,
You did. You
and
got a
that
green
was
one
when
as
she
well.
gave me an ear infection by actually screaming.
Did she actually?
I'm not even joking. The next day, I had to go to the doctors. I couldn't hear. I had stuff coming out of my ear. It wasn't pleasant. But I to get that shot, because I've done a few black canaries. Like I even shot one prior to one with her.
Mm.
To get the perfect emotion at the face, I actually, scream. What Lucy didn't tell me was that she'd worked in a place where I think it was like a scream fest or something like that, where she got paid to scream basically.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and it was an echoed room at one of the secret cons, and yeah, she deafened me to death.
My God. I think
But it was totally worth it.
it's so that is, whenever I think of your photography, I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, my other favourite one, which I'm heavily biased on, is the one you sent me after Fantasy Forest, which is looking up at my Tariel costume, which is not an angle that should be flattering, but you've made it look so like elf-like, and you've got the inside of the bow in it, which I painted and I was pleased about, and it's just a really
I have
nice,
some more from that
surprising
set that
angle.
we did on the bench. Yeah, well, that angle on most females isn't flattering at all. But when you do it right,
But
it
you,
can make
Charlotte,
you
a
look.
man.
No, when it's done right, you can obviously it accentuates everything, so it makes your legs look twice as long. It makes
Yeah.
it makes your neck look longer, and if you get the lighting right, because a lot of people who do that shot they don't get the light right, so obviously you get the dark shadow under the chin, which
I think it's the
makes you look
fact that you
stunted.
put the light rays coming in through the trees. It makes so
Yeah.
much sense that you're shooting. I think this goes back to kind of like telling, and I like to try and tell stories in my photos.
Mm.
The ones of mine that have done best on social media / I like the most have always been the photos that tell a mini story, even if it's just someone
Almost
glancing
candid.
by or looking. Yeah, and that does
Yeah.
that for me, which I love because
But they're the best photos you get from weddings, though, the candid shots.
yeah, you kind of want cosplay candid. And this is what I recommend people who are hopefully still listening to us. I'd recommend people to don't be scared at a con to be like, can I just pretend to glance to the side? Because it will probably be better than the photo where you're staring at the camera.
I always tell
You know,
people I'd say I learned from one of the best, good old Donald Manning, love him to bits.
yeah.
When he shot my first cosplay, he was actually the first photographer to shoot with me.
Oh,
And
right.
even though I was wearing a mask, he just said, look up slightly to the left, and did that. And it's something that I've done a lot with cosplayers. If you look again, it lifts your chin up, it accentuates your neck more,
Yeah.
especially works better with feminine cosplays. Um, it just works sometimes. It again, it's almost candid to the fact that a lot of people like who suffer from anxiety and things like that, they don't want to be looking down a huge lens pointed in their face.
Yeah.
So just looking to the side a bit, just look at that wall. Like when I use a flash, I always say to people, I don't know whether I've said it to you before. Imagine there's a big stick coming out my softbox, and that's where I want your eye level to be. So if you just look that way, you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about me. Pretend I'm not even there, and then that's when you generally get your best shots.
Well, it really works. And I think what we both do is try and tell a story, which it just sells a shot every time. Even though we shoot quite differently in like physical shooting style, it really does just like make for the nice. I like that you do trios on your page as well, but it makes for such a nice set of photos.
It's
Yeah,
aesthetic reasons only for myself.
fair enough. I don't have the patience, frankly.
I'd started off doing individual shots on Insta, but then I saw someone do it and I thought that looks quite neat. Um, so I've stuck with it, and unfortunately, I know a lot of togs only give people they'll take 500 photos and only give one back to the cosplayer or model or whatever. But
Yeah,
then I'm almost like kind of forcing myself to do two more for them,
yeah.
which has its toll on editing time, as I'm sure you all know. But
I'm
yeah,
currently looking at 5,000 photos I took at the weekend, so yeah. But
those are rookie numbers. You got to bump those numbers up.
I know I've got to get better. Um, we've chatted about shooting kind of one on one. We wanted to talk about potentially contentiously, which is what we love on this podcast, is making people maybe angry. But if you're angry, please write in. These are just our views, but please write in because we like the engagement. So we are happy for you to be angry, as long as you also like share, like all that. Group shoot meets at Comic Con. We've all had that message, which has been like, there's 20 of us meeting up for a Lord of the Rings group. Will you come shoot our group? Or the more structured ones like Game of Thrones meet. Do you say yes? Do you say no? Would you take them and split them up into groups? What are your thoughts?
In all honesty, I try and avoid them at all costs. And I don't mean that to sound in a bad way, but when you've got a group shoot, let's say you're doing a Marvel group shoot and you've got 5 Spider-Men, 10 Iron Men, 15 Scarlet Witches. I mean, great for a little social media post. Absolutely fine, no problem at all. You're in a group, you're meeting, discussing your cosplays, etc. Not a problem. But as a photographer, I I tend to shoot portrait. I'm a portrait photographer predominantly. So doing a massive group of like 30 people is not really my forte. If it works for the cosplay and they're all individual cosplays, then fantastic. That can work really well. But again, at cons, it's quite difficult to get the space, the backgrounds. Let's say Birmingham, for example, you'll see half the NEC behind you, and your
Yeah.
massive group of like you did the ones I loved you done recently of Guardians of the Galaxy. You've got 6, 7 people. it works. It works for the cosplay. But when you're all together, all wearing the same thing,
Yeah.
for yourself, yeah, great. Take a few photos with your phone, but to get a photographer to do that, I don't see the point because 99% of the time you will never look at that photo again.
I think I agree because it seems to be more now. Oh, like especially the ones that manage. I don't actually understand how it works, but the ones who manage to get on like the official roster for meetups, which is fine. But when they have a photographer coming, they normally take like one shot of each, and it goes on a Facebook page somewhere of like all the sets of characters, which is really lovely and I think great for networking. But if when people have asked me to do it before, like you, I much prefer shooting like cinematic portraiture. So more than one of the
It,
same character doesn't fully
it,
make
it,
sense
it goes
in
on
style.
your shoot style as well. Like I said, I'm predominantly a portrait photographer. You know my style. I
Yeah.
I I couldn't basically do it to myself because I'd probably just take my phone out and take the picture because
Yeah.
there's no point of using a high-end professional camera to take a big shot. It's like one of the reasons why at weddings, what I call catalogue photos, you know, where you get your nan, your Uncle Keith in and all that lot. You put them all in, and those are the photos that you will never look back on again for, say, 50 years. You'll get a few printed off of your house, put around, you know, the rings, etc., the bride and groom and stuff like that. You'll get them printed, put them on the wall, look at them every day. That's great. But the group shots, they'll just be stuck in an album somewhere, and you'll never see them again.
Yeah, true. And I think this is even maybe more of a contentious issue. There's always going to be someone at that shoot who is more the most accurate or the most confident or whatever it is. And when you're putting so many people doing one character together
Mm.
in a group, there is direct comparison. And this is not to say that we're comparing them, but there is also a correlation between photos that do better and people that look more accurate to stuff. So I've
Oh,
had groups
100%.
before when people have, or like I've like been a cosplayer in a group before where people have got upset because the photographer was using the same one of each of the same one of one character and like swapping them out with different people and not
Mm.
using all of that character, which was completely their right and their choice, but also was quite socially awkward for everyone else because it was clearly like they'd gone, that's my person. The rest of you can
Photographers have
just play you.
favourites. We all do it.
I do have favourites, to be fair. I've
We
got
all
favourite
do it.
photographers.
Well, yeah. But we all do it. We all pick someone. We all focus. I see it a lot of. I actually saw it this weekend. We all pick someone who we can use, or let's not gonna say like a guinea pig, and
Wow.
predominantly work with them, and almost subconsciously compare everyone else to them.
Yeah.
And then the ones that aren't as good, per se, or you don't think is good, you will tend not to work with them. It's not nice as well for those people in the group, which is another reason why I try and avoid them.
It is a fantastic comparison though, because the group I shot this weekend, which was a Pirates of the Caribbean group shoot,
I've
one
seen a few videos. Yeah.
yeah, one of each character, all organised by them, and it was myself and Gabe shooting, who Gabe Grinley's like fantastic and quite nicely is also one of my favourite photographers, but shoots quite differently to me, which was really fun. So we helped each other out. But that group of cosplayers was one of the nicest groups of cosplayers I have ever shot with. Like everyone was so chill, so
Some Martin
accommodating.
and Batsam.
Yeah, Batsam,
Sam.
Connor
Yeah, they're
organised it.
lovely, lovely people. I
Really lovely
love
people.
working with
They
those.
all completely understood what they were there to do.
Mm.
And for example, they wanted to do
Well,
some
they knew their
TikToks.
characters.
Yeah, they knew their characters and they wanted to do some TikToks and stuff. And they made sure they were doing them when we didn't want them for shooting. So I never felt like I was interrupting them and they were never interrupting me. And
Yeah.
to be fair, we were there for like 10 hours on the beach. But it was honest. It really made me think like going forward, my standards have raised for shooting groups outside
Mm.
of con or even in con because
But
there's no
again, going back to
reason
what I
for you
said
to
before,
disrespect
if
your
it's the
photographer.
group that works as a group, like with Guardians of the Galaxy, you know there's 6 or 7 people. Pirates of the Caribbean, you know that there's a set amount of characters. But then when you've got a huge group of 50 people, predominantly wearing all the same
Yeah.
costumes, I just don't see the point,
Yeah,
apart
that's
from a
true.
nice, cute social media post.
And I think as well, everyone's worried that everyone wants a picture with them in, and I think a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, slightly panic at cons that they're going to get forgotten. Because
Yeah.
I mean, who's advocating for you if not you? but then it makes
we've
it
all
quite
been there.
stressful as a photographer because everyone wants it now to make sure they're not forgotten, and as a photographer everything ends up being worse because you're being stressed.
I think I don't know. I don't really know. Don't think I knew you back then. But when I wore my Magneto costume, which I think is probably one of my best, if not the best, my OG Magneto, I had one shoot all day. I Loads of the members of the public took loads of photos of me, which was great. It's a lovely feeling.
Mm.
But like the elite togs, um, like just weren't interested.
This is the bit that you will hear me and Eddie talk about, where we're like, we're going to talk about this after the podcast, and you will never know, but
Okay.
we will know. Yeah, I think that is the case, and I've actually fallen out with a couple of friends in the past. Not fallen out with, but fallen out of contact with, because their entire self-worth at a con was based on whether or not people wanted to shoot with them. And it was nothing to do
Absolutely.
with standard of cosplay. It was so much just like your cosplay is so niche, nobody knows what you are.
Seeing it from both sides,
Yeah.
if you, especially with something that's popular at the time, say obviously the new Joker Folie à Deux film's coming out, there's going to be a million Harley Quinns come Halloween time when it comes out, all dressed like Lady Gaga, same as it was a few years ago. All the photographers will shoot straight over to there because it's popular at the time. But then when you get a little niche, even if it's absolutely impeccable to the character, if it's accurate or whatever, fantastic. But everyone will just ignore it because they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I still, one of my favorite cosplays ever, and this is no disrespect to you or my lovely girlfriend, was a little ginger kid, and he had a placard around his neck with some bread hanging around his neck that said "Gingerbread Man."
That's
And I thought that
really
was
funny.
absolutely amazing. That's one of the best
So
cosplays
funny. Oh my god.
I've ever seen.
You
And
know
I would
what?
shoot that all day.
I've got no plans for October, but now I'm sorted. Oh, that is incredible. And I'm with you though. Like, there's a dream costume I've got that I want so badly, and I'm now at a point where I could probably make, and it's from my favorite film in the world, which is called A Dangerous Beauty, and has the lovely Rufus
Okay.
Sewell in it. And it came out in about 1995 or something mad like that. So it's actually older than me. And sorry, Tom. And it's the main character wears like Italian silk courtesan stuff, and she was a real person and a poetess. But if I wore that to a con, I could look as exact as possible, and no one would have a clue what I was wearing. And so I just don't want to do it because I don't want to have to explain all day that I'm,
That sort of cosplay would benefit more for an out of con shoot.
Exactly, yeah. Especially if I was in Venice, that would help.
Literally. But again, like you'll see togs at cons. Say they're not so well known in our lovely community that will literally just shoot popular cosplays. And that's I had it at Fantasy Forest. I've done it for a while now. I've had like a semi Marvel and or Disney ban because there's only so many of the same character I can shoot over and over again and try not to edit it in exactly the same way. One day I shot with 7 Scarlet Witches. And
so it doesn't bode well for me bringing Scarlet Witch back, does it?
I mean, she's coming back soon. But again, it'll be popular at the time, so you'll get lots of them. But
True.
7 in a day, trying to make them all look different and give the cosplayer something back.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to post it on social, then your feeds get covered in. Nothing against Scarlet Witch whatsoever, but if you see lots of them and lots of them, lots of them, people just get bored and you get no engagement. It's like the same thing over and over again.
I mean, one of my questions was based on like whether like if you would use cosplay shots in your portfolio, and if so, what are your criteria?
Yeah, I have them. But generally it's ones that people have completely 100% made from scratch.
Yeah.
Nothing against store-bought ones whatsoever. But coming from cosplaying myself, where I tried to make everything from scratch, it's just a better feeling, especially when you see it all edited nice. You just think, yeah, I made that. That was part of the 50% of the cosplaying was making the cosplay, 50% was wearing it.
I think for me, to get in a portfolio, into my like website portfolio, I do have a page. It either has to be like it has to demonstrate a good use of like compositional lighting or like composite special effects. If just a con shot from Comic-Con will never go in, however good it is, because it doesn't look, in my opinion, super professional to have what looks like an event photo in there. Unless I was trying to be an event photographer, and then I would
guy
do very different photos.
I can never remember his name. I think he's from Finland, but his makeup skills are absolutely impeccable. And one of the best shots I've ever taken is literally just of his face. I can't remember what style it is, but you know where you cut the top of the hair off, and it's just like from forehead down, really close zoomed in. But his makeup was absolutely. It was very, very simple.
Yeah.
But stunningly beautiful at the same time. And it's one of my favourite photos to date. I do a thing a lot. I've said it to you before, where you just pop your chin down a little bit down, and then look up with your eyes.
Yeah.
It gives you that kind of menacing, but not so much moody kind of look.
The Kubrick stare, I believe it's called.
Yes, that's the one. There is a specific name for the style of photography where they chop the top of the hair off. I can never remember it.
I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, Paul something, I think it is. Don't quote me on that.
Paul
I do that
Kubrick?
a lot. Possibly, no relation. But yeah, that's always been one of my first pictures I put in my portfolio.
Yeah. I think if it's a really good photo from a con, that's fine. It's if it looks like it was taken at a con, that is, even if it's the best shot in the world, almost an automatic no for me.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't want something like with the XL in the background or anything like that. It wouldn't go in there, because that doesn't again, for aesthetic reasons, it definitely wouldn't touch it.
Let's get controversial again.
Ooh.
Or for the first time. Maybe we haven't been controversial. I'm being too lucid with that phrase. You mentioned elitism.
Really well behaving.
We've been really well behaved. We know so much, team. We're being very, very good.
You're proud.
I'm actually very proud of both of us because we love a good gossip.
I've not even swore yet.
Fucking hell, mate. Come on. I did message Eddie beforehand saying, can we swear? And he went, fuck yes, you can. So have at it. But elitism, you were talking about elitism in photographers. I thought you meant elitism in cosplayers. So let's talk about both.
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 100%.
Obviously, without naming any names, and these are completely our own opinions, but I'll start this one off because I can. I do think elitism from photographers can genuinely be quite damaging, not only to the cosplay community, but like to individuals, because it's very obvious, and I think photographers should be a little bit mindful when, like, if you're shooting a whole group and you shoot everyone except one person, you can see it. Photography is a visual medium. You can kind of tell, like, what obviously you can pick and choose as you want, but some photographers really will just shoot with like whoever's got the highest engagement, whoever's got the biggest numbers, whoever's cosplaying the most accurately from the most recent film. And it's not to say that's a bad thing to do, but it does long term
human nature
suffer. It makes your photography suffer because you just get used to shooting the best of the best and not kind of working with normal people.
You do. You'll gravitate towards what you see. You'll think is the best. But for people who say, you know it yourself, coming from both sides, from cosplaying and photography, people who say there's no elitism in it, considering it's a welcoming community, there is so much elitism. I've been accused of elitism once, and I had it out with that person.
Was it me?
Probably. You might have been drunk at the time.
Maybe, yeah. Sounds like me.
But there is definitely... I've got favourites. We've all got favourites. But I would try and shoot with... She's not mine.
Oh.
No, she is. We've all got favourites. We'll always try and gravitate towards people who we think look better. That's just a common thing. You don't... I mean, as a photographer, you wouldn't want to shoot with someone who's wearing a bin bag and said they were Batman, would you? It's just common sense. But again, like you said, when you have a group of people, which is one of the reasons I can never say no to people, because so like 6 or 7 people come up to me and there's one at the back who just doesn't look like anything you've ever seen before. I feel obligated, so I try and include them, because honestly, if that was me in that situation, I would feel like utter garbage if a photographer said no.
But it costs nothing to be kind like that, and I think the difference.
No, you don't even have to post the pictures. You can just send them to them. You know.
And the difference is between being an elite, someone who's being elitist, and someone who's being discerning is that you can be discerning in who you choose to do the bigger edits on without charging them, for example, or like because you want that photo, or like who you deliberately go out of your way to do a little bit more of a cinematic shot with, not just a portrait shot. That is, you're right as a photographer to be discerning. It's when you literally are like looking at people in advance and going, well, you won't do anything for me in terms of like numbers or.
And same from cosplayers. Cosplayers will only shoot with certain togs that know that will get them a decent picture. I've definitely seen that. I've had that myself. You get a well-known cosplayer with, let's say, a few thousand likes on Instagram who won't shoot with you because they don't think it will benefit them.
Damn.
And
Can't
vice
relate.
versa.
Can't
Not
relate.
everybody's perfect, Charlotte.
No, I do agree with you. I think
I've seen it, especially because I was cosplaying properly for about, let's say, 5 years ago. I started and then like slowly retired it over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Every generation I see, even from a year to year basis, let's say the clicks that come through are groups and big groups, people who then cross the line between influencers and cosplayers, which is a whole topic I don't want to get into because I don't think we have that much time left.
Literally, what a mood.
At some point, influencers take a lot of the fun away for cosplayers.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing it for cosplay, they're doing it to be an influencer. There's black and white. But the influencers now are getting more attention than people who genuinely love cosplay, which I think's wrong. It should be the other way around. You know, influencers by all means go do out of con shoots, etc. Get famous, not a problem at all. But the whole point of cosplay is costume play, not to, do it for likes on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as a cosplayer, people being elitist with cosplays just it feels pointless. Like we've all rocked up, and I've seen a massive change in this with House of the Dragon since. So I about 9 years ago, 8 9 years ago, I met Sam doing Game of Thrones costumes, and back then was like before pro cosplay and stuff got big, and before COVID, which was a massive like flipping point. And almost everyone you met who did Game of Thrones had like bought or sourced or made their outfit out of scraps. Like everything was handmade. So when you met another Game of Thrones cosplayer, you'd spend a good 10 to 20 minutes just talking about fabric choices and stuff because everyone had had to make it. Whereas now with House of the Dragon, and it's not a negative, but because a lot more people have been able to buy it, the conversation is more about not like, how have you done this and the craftsmanship and the work and all this. It's just to do with like the show and, oh, you look great, which it is a difference in tone. And I feel like it's put more of an emphasis on you have to pick characters you look good as or look like, rather than everyone's just proud that you put the effort in. And that has made it more stressful to cosplay, and it's meant that people that are more elitist with cosplay, or photographers that are more elitist for like accuracy, is actually changing what people are picking to wear, which is a weird one, and I'm interested to see where it goes.
I don't know, but I'm like the biggest Batman fan you will ever meet.
I actually didn't know that about you.
Did you not?
No. See, I've seen very little Batman, so it just really passes me by.
I've only cosplayed him once because, excuse this pun, I didn't want to not do him justice. Thank you.
That's where the swearing comes in.
No, I did my own version. I did a pirate Batman. But the looks I got from other Batman cosplayers was just utter disdain. It was very 50-50. Like someone said it was amazing, some said it was good. But even in the Batman community, it's probably the same as Doctor Who community. And so like if you're like your cowl or whatever isn't 100% accurate, or if it's not from a certain vendor that made the ones from the films, or if it's not screen accurate. The same as Star Wars, like is it the 501st?
Oh yeah, 501st. If you're listening, really, calm down.
No, it's really, obviously they're really strict. They have to be screen accurate, which I get and understand. But like with the Batman stuff, I mean, it says in the film I'm not wearing hockey pads, and that I've seen people wearing hockey pads. And as a photographer, I probably wouldn't shoot with them, but that's because I'm a Batman fan.
Yeah,
I'll
that's fair.
try, and I'll make them look good. But even in that little community itself, it's terrible. I'm a member of certain groups on Facebook where everyone just rips into each other because they haven't got this screen accurate cape or boots or whatever, and it's just cosplay, bro.
It's so funny. Like I like to think of myself as a kind of just a cheerful cosplayer who, if I manage to get it all off Primark and it looks half good, I'm happy. Like we've got a big Doctor
Yeah.
Who shoot coming up. I've got all my stuff off Amazon. It looks fine. I'm happy with it. But yeah, some people are mad. I think the weirdest conversation I've had at a con was I was at Star Wars Celebration in my Mara Jade, which was a bodysuit and like black leather trousers, basically.
I've seen it. It's good.
And I was thank you. And I was chatting to this girl who
It's not
was
screen
trying to.
accurate though.
It wasn't screen accurate. Which she pointed out to me, and she was like, "Oh well, if you went to this person on Etsy and just got the two seams sewn down the front of your top, then you'd be like more screen accurate, and then you could apply to the 501st." And she really didn't understand that I was not interested, and I was like, "No, like it's fine. I don't really care." And she went, "Oh no, but it's just the seams." And I was like, "Right, first of all, I've looked at the person who makes those bodysuits, 501st approved, and it was like 200 quid plus.
Yeah.
Second of all, this is my shirt I wear to work, so I can't sew seams down it because I wear it to work. And third of all, I don't care. Mara Jade is a slightly sexy manic pixie dream girl for Star Wars fans who is actually incredibly powerful from the comics and is ginger. Key point, don't have to wear a wig.
Sure.
And she really didn't understand that I didn't mind that I wasn't accurate, which I thought was kind of fascinating.
I learned a lesson years ago, and it goes for cosplay as well. It's not what you wear; it's how you wear it.
Yeah. And I wore it like a woman who didn't care if she was accurate or not.
You obviously upset someone.
I wore it like a small child who'd been handed a toy lightsaber and told to run about, and that is exactly what I did.
Drag through the back of a bush. See, you got battle damage. It's all good.
If you have to kneel down to take a picture, it's natural weathering.
Yep.
But, yeah, we're getting towards the end of our thing. We've covered a lot. We've covered groups. We've covered how we shoot. We've covered elitism, which is always fun. I thought it'd be fun to do a little quick fire round.
Okay.
Then if Eddie listens to this back and doesn't hate it, he can also ask himself / future guests these, which will be fun. I'm giving you homework, Eddie. You're welcome. So I believe you've got a few questions. I've got a few questions. We can add some more in as we think of them. But quick fire Ed talks about round. What is the best bit of gear that you'd recommend to a new photographer?
Glass. It's all about your lens. You can have the biggest, most expensive camera in the world, but if you haven't got the glass to go with it, the correct lens, like you can have a really cheap, nasty £100 camera, put some decent lens on it, and you'll get the shots that you want.
Yeah, I would go for graphics tablet wise. I have an Uji tablet. They're about 30 to 50 quid on Amazon. They're like plastic, big squares. You can get the small ones or the big ones.
I've got an Uji one.
Yeah, they're as basic as can be.
I never use it.
Honestly, my Uji one I've been using it since I started, 10 years. I've just bought myself a new one. The old one still works. I basically bought a new one because I thought I should, and it does the same thing.
I'll send you a picture of the one I've got. I bet it's the same one.
Please do. There is no point getting a Wacom tablet. There is no point getting a tablet with a screen, because what no one tells you is that you have to have a different screen resolution for the one with the screen. Just learn to use pen pressure on a basic tablet and you're good to go. I will tell Eddie to put a link in the description because it is the cheapest and best thing I've ever bought.
Yeah. Mine was £40 and I've probably used it about 4 times. But when I do use it, I like it.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's all you need. If you want to start composition or retouch or anything, genuinely it's a cheap buy that you can use for life. Question from Tom, please, sir.
Your preferred software?
Ooh, I currently use Capture One.
Knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, Capture One for editing my photos, and then Photoshop for like further editing them. Mainly because Lightroom, for some reason, has always run really slowly for me. I don't know why. It just hates me.
On Mac?
No, God no. I have respect for myself.
Hold on. It's probably your scratch disk that's probably too chocker.
I think it's just always hated me. But Capture One I really like. The workflow,
Yeah, that can run on a potato.
30-day free trial, which is good. Yeah, and also when I got my new Nikon, Lightroom wouldn't let me download the photos from it for ages, but Capture One would because they update faster than Adobe does, which is nice.
Yeah, Lightroom's now improved the live capture. It's basically caught up with Capture One.
Oh, nice.
I've
Okay.
only used it a few times to be honest. When I've done like home shoots and stuff in my old little studio, but it's a lot better than it used to be.
Okay. What about you? What software do you use?
Ooh, obviously Photoshop. Um, Predominantly Photoshop. I'll have a play about in Lightroom, and then if I like it, I'll take it into Photoshop and start all over again. But plugins is where I'm all at. I use Boris Effects, which
Oh
is
yeah.
what apparently the big Hollywood people use. Um, when I'm doing high fashion, I'll use Portrait Pro just to make the eyes not look like a wax work dummy. I've recently started using Luminar Neo,
Hmm.
which I would recommend because it's very much like Capture One, but with more stuff in it to do composites.
Okay.
Um,
If we're
and
doing plugins quickly, I've got a lot of the Infinity panels, which are good,
mm,
and also Oniric. For everyone who likes
yeah,
what I do with my glows, I do build them up myself. But the little like mwah, icing on the cake is Oniric by Composite Nation,
yeah,
which is a one-off buy, but it's a glow generator that does like realistic glows in your photos. So that is like,
that's
oh
what Luminar's done now. They've just added
yeah,
Luminar Neo, especially. Boris Effects is quite good at it as well. If you want like, let's say, curved edges and fire, it's amazing for fire.
nice.
Um, but yeah, I try and avoid AI stuff as much as possible.
Especially now you
Um,
get flagged on it.
Oh my God, yeah, exactly. And people who don't, that's another thing I really wanted to bring up. I completely forgot. People who, especially on Instagram, when you can tell the blurred out their face or whatever, make them look better.
Yeah.
But then they don't use the AI button to say that they've used AI, even though it's blatantly obvious you absolutely have.
All the people that say, I don't understand why it says AI, I didn't use AI, I just extended the background. And you're like, yes, but that is AI because
Yeah,
the computer is extending the background. If you want to do that without getting the AI tag, you drag it out yourself.
yeah,
But I digress.
100%.
Okay, favorite photo, gut reaction that you've ever taken?
There's been quite a few.
You can name a couple.
Um, One I actually posted this morning with Dexter's cosplay. Love him. It just worked straight away. Even though I had him standing on a rock in the middle of a waterfall.
Oh, that does
Um,
look good.
Again, his partner Katie, just in a wheat field, but the sun came down. I got my own natural light rays, didn't have to add any in. I looked at the back of the camera, which is actually quite deceptive. I don't know whether you know this, but what you shoot in camera, obviously it pops up a little JPEG. It doesn't show the raw image.
Hmm.
So it will actually look better in camera, and then you put it on your computer and it will look like turd.
And then you have to fix it again. And that's where
Then
the
you have to
photography
fix.
comes in.
That's where the Mr. Photoshop comes
Are
in.
there any like further back that you took where you were like, I've nailed this?
Um, there's, there's been so many. Probably from the first fantasy forest I went to, that the guy I was telling you about with the close-ups. I just knew it'd come out nicely. I didn't. I Again, as much as I like editing, I try and do as little editing as possible. So if
Yeah.
it works in the back of the camera, I won't have to edit as much, especially with like lighting and stuff. And I used to do a thing where I shot into the light. I
Mhm.
don't do it as much anymore because I can edit in afterwards. But if I'm using a strobe, I'll shoot into the light, and some of the ones I've gone, you can just see by looking at the back of the camera. Yeah, absolutely nailed that.
Yeah.
Don't have to edit it. They're the ones I like the most.
I think for me, there was a Witcher one I took at Birmingham, which is like a Yennefer, Witcher, and Ciri. That it just the lighting was perfect, the
Mm,
cosplays were perfect. It was Tainted Pixie again. Everything was really good. Some of my self portraits, I've taken them and I've been like, holy shit. Specifically, the one with the paint, which was weirdly one where it just turned out how I had in my head. So that was
mm,
nice. And then probably like when I first worked out I could do lightsabers really well and did some like big composite Star Wars shots. Though I just love those because it was such a flex of like, look what I can do.
yeah,
Um, and I still love those to this day.
The Star Wars one I did of you with the lightsaber going across your face.
That was good.
If you look at that on a big screen, I said to you before, it's completely different from looking at the way you see it on your phone.
Yeah.
But they work. It's one of the most popular ones I do with lightsabers. It brings out the light glare in their eyes.
I take it back. My favourite one is not lightsaber one. It's when I hand drew in all the lightning on Scott's Thor cosplay, which took about 3 days, but was really worth it.
I'd recommend Boris Effect. You can do it in about 20 seconds.
Fuck off. I've built my own brush for that. I'm never going to be using Boris Effect just purely out of spite. Question from you, I believe, sir.
Your biggest inspiration and influence?
In life?
Photography-wise. Yeah.
I'm absolutely obsessed with. There's a couple people, but Liquid Verve, Alex, and Legends of Saatchi, both they just shoot quite differently, but they both shoot cosplay at like a high fashion level, I'd say. So it's a real beautiful mix of like very natural composition, but all of their shots are like taken on location, really perfectly retouched, really perfectly lit, and like they shoot all the time. Every weekend they're out with different groups of people shooting. It's the absolute dream. So if anyone ever wants me to come shoot them for a weekend, please let me know, because I'd love to do more stuff like that. Also for more like fashion stuff, I like Irene Rudnick, who I
love her.
I was lucky enough to do her course when she was in England. She's a lovely person. Taught me everything I know about retouching, and her work is stunning. Jessica Cabasi, they both have really good YouTube channels with tutorials on, and Danny Batista, who shoots women like I've never seen someone shoot women. He does a lot of like swimwear type stuff, but it's also stunningly lit, and like it's the absolute dream. It's the dream lighting, it's the dream scenario. Also was lucky enough to work with him in a one-on-one, and the amount of stuff he told me about lighting just blew my tiny little brain. And then finally, for like coloured gel lighting, there is no one else except Jake Hicks, and I will die on that hill. That man basically created neon gel lighting, and has continued to be the best at it. Does weekly technique things on his page, does weekly live streams on his page critiquing people's pictures, does a whole bunch of online courses and in-person courses. If you want to learn studio lighting or coloured lighting, go and look at what he does, because it is amazing. And we'll add all these as links below as well. But that's me off my soapbox. Who are your inspirations?
There's a couple. Obviously, going back in the day when I first started cosplaying, which got me into the photography side of it, Donald Manning, absolute legend.
Yeah.
And a guy I know quite well, Andy Taft, goes by the name of Cosplay Capture. If it wasn't for them two, I would not be doing cosplay shoots at all.
Amazing.
They were the first two people to ever shoot with me, and Andy's probably one of the only people who would actually trust to do my wedding, if he ever came out of retirement. But during lockdown, first lockdown.
Hello, it's me, future editing Charlotte, back with Eddie's links. So if you go to foodandcosplay.org/links, you'll find the links to all the Food and Cosplay socials. If you go to foodandcosplay.org,
there's amazing little tutorials on YouTube. Irene, obviously, she's on.
Hello, it's future editing Charlotte back with Eddie's socials. So if you go to foodandcosplay.org/links, you can find links to all of Eddie's socials. If you go to foodandcosplay.org, the general website, you can find more cosplay photography and articles. If you go to foodandcosplay.com/podcast, you can find previously recorded podcast episodes. And if you head to patreon.com/food-and-cosplay, you can find some more episodes and sneak peeks from future plans, I guess.
And his work,
feel free to subscribe to Eddie's Patreon. He's pretty cool. And now back to past Charlotte.
It's just incredible what you can do with light. I love shooting in monochrome. You get so much more detail.
Yeah.
A lot of emotion, especially again around eyes and smiles and things like that. I would highly recommend viewing some of his work.
We'll link all of these below so you guys can go and like look at them yourself, because I think the people that we look up to are also people that like they're just objectively good. So if you look at them, you'll learn something.
Yeah.
Before we
A
say
lot of them are
goodbye,
tutors, so
yeah. Before we say goodbye, I'm going to do one last quick fire, which is: would you shoot a relevant cosplay just for social media engagement? For example, put up a Deadpool and Wolverine because it was coming out.
probably not. That's not what I'm about.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm.
Same. I just don't care that much.
If it was Batman, then maybe.
Yeah,
In a
okay.
Batman fan. But
What
anyone
we've
else
learned
is.
about you this podcast is that you love eyes and Batman, which, to be fair,
See,
it
no, you
makes
say that, but I hate eyes. I have a fear of eyes. Like, I can watch someone be chopped up, maimed, eaten alive, not a problem. As soon as you go near their eyes, I'm just like, no, I'm done. But
it's
when it comes to
nice.
photography, you have
It's
to
nice
do
though
the
because
eyes.
Eddie's always going on about Harley Quinn, so at least we've got the other side of it this time. I'd love to see you two now just do a podcast talking about this shit while I'm in the background not understanding a thing. Like,
Bring it on.
bring it on, do it. Yeah, I'm happy. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Tom for being here, and pre-warning, Tom, I'm about to ask you for all your pages and stuff. Apparently so. While Tom looks that up, I'm only saying that because traditionally I have to look it up every time I'm on this podcast. Massive
I
thank
have a
you to
link
Eddie
tree.
for letting us, have shenanigans in his absence. And Eddie's also a photographer I absolutely love working with. I hope he doesn't listen to this, but really love Eddie. Very much hope he enjoyed his break and doesn't hate us after listening to this. He is elitist and he likes Harley Quinn, but you can't be perfect. So cheers to Eddie for letting us be here. Next time I'll bring on Andy and we'll just talk about space planes and Star Wars for an entire hour. But until that time, Tom, if you'd like to tell people where they can find you, go for it.
Yep, thank you. Pleasure to be here. It's on Instagram. I go as clicks__83. Facebook is just plain and simple clicks83. And Purple Port, again, clicks83. I do have a TikTok, but I'm never ever on there because I'm not a massive fan of the app. Again, it's clicks83.
Amazing. Consistent. I like it.
Yeah. Took me about 3 hours to do.
Yeah, fair. You can find me on @CharlotteWoolrich_cosplay or @CharlotteWoolrich_photography on most pages. I'm not even going to bother to link to Twitter anymore because it's a dumpster fire and I hate Elon Musk. @me Elon. And I also can't remember what it is and I don't want to Google it. You can also find my portfolio on www.charlottewoolrichphotography.com. Please hire me. And I will do all of Eddie's links in a minute when I've looked them up and have written them down. So look forward to future me doing that. Hello, it's future editing Charlotte back with Eddie's socials. So if you go to foodandcosplay.org/links, you can find links to all of Eddie's socials. If you go to foodandcosplay.org, the general website, you can find more cosplay photography and articles. If you go to foodandcosplay.com/podcast, you can find previously recorded podcast episodes. And if you head to patreon.com/foodandcosplay, you can find some more episodes and sneak peeks from future plans, I guess. Feel free to subscribe to Eddie's Patreon. He's pretty cool. And now back to Past Charlotte. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Tom, mainly, because you're the only person here. I'm not editing this out. Everyone just gets this incompetence. Thank you, Tom, for being here. I've actually had an amazing chat. We'll link everyone below so you can see what we're talking about.
You have done a wonderful job.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful guest. Back to Eddie next week, I believe. So thank you for having us and goodbye.